Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be doing a 2024 election prediction between Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and former President Donald Trump. This scenario is quite unlikely to happen. I don't really think RFK Jr. has an amazing shot at winning the Democratic primary against Joe Biden. I mean, currently he's at 15 to 20% in the primary polling. It's possible that some Republicans try to vote in the Democratic primary as well to help elevate RFK Jr. because I do think he would be a weaker candidate than Joe Biden. And we're actually seeing some Republicans say that they're just temporarily swapping their registration to the Dems or they're going to vote in the primary for RFK Jr. I've seen on social media. So he does have some Republican backing here. But again, I think he would really turn off a lot of more left wing types of voters. But let's get right into the first few states here. So the first state, Colorado. I think it would probably go down to likely Democratic. Here's why. Even though Biden won the state by 14 points, I think RFK would definitely underperform here. He wouldn't get good turnout among minority voters because, again, he's not super left wing enough. He's like a lot more centrist, sort of like Joe Manchin in a way. On vaccines, he's pretty much kind of aligned with the Republican Party as well, like the vaccine skeptic. So again, he would probably get some better support in the rural areas in Colorado, but do worse in the urban areas and lose turnout among the more hardcore Democrats. In New Mexico, however, I don't think it would go down to Lee, and I still think RFK Jr. would win this state of New Mexico by 6. I still think he would get enough support here. I just don't see Trump making it down to a lean state. I don't really think that's going to happen at all here. There's no Gary Johnson running the state to take the votes away from the Democrats here. The next few states. Let's go to Maine. Maine, again, Trump's not very popular in the state. He did pretty badly here. Even though RFK Jr. wouldn't be the best candidate for this state, I still think he would win Maine by a likely Democratic margin while losing Maine second. Would it go likely or lean? Honestly, it would probably go likely because, again, Democratic turnout would go down a bit in the urban areas here, and there's very few urban areas in Maine second at the same time, but the ones that are there, those are important to keeping the district competitive for the Dems. New Hampshire would probably also go down to a lean Democratic margin. Again, it's a social liberal state, but again, RFK Jr., he's not super socially liberal. So he might lose support among Democrats here, just not be that excited to turn out for him or so. In Iowa and Ohio, however, I do think he would probably do a bit better in Iowa because it's a very rural state. Again, I think he would do a tiny bit better than Biden in the rural areas while sacrificing a lot of those urban and suburban margins, which he would do worse than Biden in those areas. But he would keep Iowa within a likely margin. Same with Ohio. He wouldn't lose them by landslides. In Florida, it doesn't really matter. I still think Trump would pretty easily win Florida against RFK Jr. Same with Texas. I don't see RFK Jr. closing the gap that much with the few hundreds, a few thousand of votes from those rural areas he could net compared to losing probably tens of thousands of votes for the Democrats in the urban areas just because of his positions on the issues would definitely hurt him quite a bit. In Alaska, it's a very rural state, so I see him keeping it down to a likely Republican margin or so. He wouldn't win the state, but he would make it into the likely column. Virginia, I think he would definitely underperform in Virginia. I really think in Northern Virginia he wouldn't get out the turnout he would need to win this state comfortably. I really think it would go down to a lean Democratic margin, honestly. I think he would lose those turnout in the urban areas. He's not a good candidate for minority turnout either. So black voters, the turnout among them would go down because of how just center-right he is on some issues, honestly. That would definitely hurt him. Plus, I don't think he's an exciting candidate for minority voters as well. I really don't see him turning them out that much. Even with that Kennedy last name, I don't think that really matters so much compared to what policies RFK Jr. supports. In North Carolina, I really don't think he would make this state competitive, and neither would Georgia as well. I think a black turnout would definitely go down with RFK as the nominee. I think he wouldn't really get enough turnout with black voters, just the same reason in Virginia. Plus, Georgia, it's a turnout state. You need to get good turnout in these urban areas and these suburban areas for the Democrats here. I see turnout in the urban and suburbs going against RFK Jr. Well, he would probably do a tiny bit better in the rural areas, but doing a tiny bit better in the rural is not going to net you more votes than the urban areas and the suburbs, honestly. Okay. Nevada and Arizona. Again, I just think that Trump would probably narrowly win independence in both these states against RFK Jr. just because of his policy positions. Wouldn't really sit well with a lot of voters. Plus, again, Democratic turnout would be a bit lower in the urban areas, which you really need those urban turnout in both these states here. So Nevada and Arizona probably would both be lean Republican states. Maybe Arizona could go down to tilt. Let's think about it here. Would he get down to tilt? Turnout would be down with Latino voters. Maybe with like the independent voters somehow he could make it a bit closer. That's a good point. Again, Trump has frequently attacked McCain like crazy, so I guess I'll put it down to tilt for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if he loses by a lean margin here. But for now, I'm putting it as tilt. So in Nebraska second, would RFK Jr. still win this district? Honestly, I think he would just because of how much his district just has a hatred of Donald Trump at this point. So I think he would narrowly win it. In Minnesota, again, he would lose a bit of support in the urban and suburban areas, but he would make up a tiny bit of ground in the rural areas. Would Minnesota go down to lean? That's a really good question, honestly. But I don't think he would perform as bad as Hillary Clinton here. He'd probably do a tiny bit better than rurals. So I guess I would put it as a 5-point win for RFK Jr. in Minnesota. A very, very narrow one. But I think he'd narrowly get that win of a likely margin. So now we're down to the last few states. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. All right. So we'll start off with Wisconsin first off. I just don't think he'll get the right amount of turnout in the urban and suburban areas. I think you'd forfeit that in favor of the rural areas, like I've been saying throughout this video. So again, you need that high urban turnout for a Democrat to win in Wisconsin. To win in Pennsylvania as well, you need high urban turnout. I just don't see that happening for RFK Jr. just because his policy positions aren't really in line with the Democratic Party. I see the more left-wing types just not being that willing to turn out for RFK Jr. Plus, I could see a lot of minority voters not really being super inspired to vote for him either, considering his positions on the issues are just sometimes like right-wing positions, honestly. With a lot of centrist ones, he's just not really an inspiring candidate. Maybe because of his last name, but honestly, I don't think the last name matters, as I mentioned before. In the state of Michigan, again, Democrats actually won the state of Michigan by quite a bit in 2020. Like, it was around like 2.5% or so. So again, would RFK Jr. win Michigan with decreased turnout in Detroit and a lot of its suburbs, but he would make up for that in a bit of the rural areas? Honestly, I think it would just be narrowly tilt blue, but I really wouldn't be surprised if Trump were to win it against RFK Jr., but we're never going to see this scenario happen. It's just super, super unlikely. But for now, I see it as a narrow tilt in favor of RFK Jr. The popular vote, it'd probably be close to tied with both of these candidates. Because again, urban turnout would be down in New York and California. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump would win the popular vote by a percent or so. So honestly, I think Trump would just narrowly edge out RFK Kennedy Jr. in the popular vote, while winning by a decent margin in the Electoral College. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know what you think of this video down in the comments below. I'll see y'all in the next one.